Don't wait till the battle's over. Wait. Don't wait till the struggle ends. Shout now. Shout now. Right now. Shout now. Shout now. Don't wait till you make it.
Hey everyone, it's Phillip and welcome to the PHILLIP Show. And per usual, grab your coffee. Listen, I got ready this morning and I ran down. If you're in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which I am, and you are downtown, stop by the Emporium. They had some awesome coffee this morning. I don't know the name, but they also have pumpkin spice. Oh, you know what? It's pumpkin spice. I thought it was going to be tea, but it's not. So yeah, we're in the fall season and everything is kind of pumpkin spice. I love going down there just to kind of get away with the burritos and just seeing people from the community. So if you're ever down there, just come say hello and we can hang out, chill, take a selfie, whatever. Listen, so you know, here at the PHILLIP Show, we always look for opportunities to educate in inspiration. We always look for those opportunities to highlight journeys, highlight stories that that you may have otherwise never have discovered. And the power of that is that the more we know about different people, different situations, and different journeys, my hope is the more understanding, the more care, the more concern, and the more relationship that we'll build, and hopefully kind of cut down a lot of barriers, move aside a lot of those boundaries between interpersonal, you know, it's just a lot. So today, I'm super excited. And let me tell you why. Author, transformational, and spiritual coach and speaker Ryan Joseph Allen authentically shares his story to inspire others to share their stories. And he is here today. When we show up hyper authentically, we are able to help change those around us simply by being ourselves. Ryan is wrapping up his dissertation for his doctorate in education, bridging the gap between leadership and spirituality. His focus is on post-traumatic growth after lived or perceived religious trauma. Author of an amazing best-selling book, My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here with you today and get to share part of my story. And that's really where it begins. My drug dealer simply shared her story with me, her faith journey. And that led me on this path of recovery in so many ways, and this path of healing. And now it's one of my main goals and missions is to get out there and share my story to inspire others to share their story, just as she did for me. So I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, well, and thank you for taking it. You're in the middle of a book tour. There's just a lot going on for you. So I'm very humbled that you took time out of your schedule to talk to us today. But listen, I want to kind of go back. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and kind of how you got from, I guess, to the courage to not only be yourself, but to stand on that platform.
Oh, wow. How long do we have? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I do have my coffee.
It's going to be a long road. No, I'm just, I've learned to say it in about 5 minutes. So I'll work on that. But it really started when I was really young. I was 3 or 4, realized I was so vastly different than the other men around me. My stepdad, my brothers, my male friends, my gender norms were like way off from what I was mirrored to me. So I didn't feel connected to men, didn't feel connected to myself too much. By the time I was 6, I had my first thoughts of ending my own life. And diving into that later on in life, I was able to see that I had a lot of meso level and macro level traumas through religion. And I was always really connected to divinity, to God, to universal energy. And since I was really little, I'm talking 2 or 3, I felt that connection since kind of that cognitive thought and those memories are in my brain. And the problem is my immediate family was really supporting and loving of all people. But I had an extended family that was really conservative Christian. And I would hear this rhetoric around LGBTQ people going to hell and all those things. And I had an older cousin named Billy, much older than me, like a second or third cousin. And they would always talk about Billy and how Billy was damned and we should pray for Billy and prayers for Billy. And going on and on. And even though they didn't say those things directly to me, like, hey, Ryan, you're different. You might not even know you're different yet, but you kind of feel different to us. And, you know, they didn't say like, you're LGBTQ, you're going to hell. But I heard this rhetoric around this person that I saw them face to face treat with kindness and love, and then behind their back say these horrible things. And then on the same accord, I would see how they treated certain people and how they treated him differently, even in person, that probably wasn't aware to him, or maybe was aware to him. And I picked up on that at a very young age, 4 or 5 years old. And I think that's what ultimately led to these thoughts when I was 6 years old. It was right around Christmas. I was sitting on my futon and in my room, and I was doing an arts and crafts project, as per normal for me. And I had these thoughts of ending my own life, and pretty graphic thoughts. And I hadn't seen that really displayed around me too much, or hadn't seen that in like TV or anything like that. I mean, my parents were really good at like watching what we were watching, and we didn't have those type of conversations that young. And so it was really like an original thought for me. And so as I got older and into my teenage years, obviously realized I was in the LGBTQ plus community shortly after the age of 6. But by the time I was a teenager, I was, you know, into drugs and alcohol, self-mutilation, suicide attempts, the whole works. And it really, when I did the work to work backwards in my life and to look at things, it was really this self-loathing that led to a lot of those other activities. And that self-loathing, I think, really was rooted in that religious meso-level trauma of kind of, you're not good enough, you're not loved, you're not seen, you're not valuable, you're not anything.
Let me ask you, because I know you were talking about the other person. While you were on your journey, did any of those feelings that were put onto the person that you were watching, the experience that you were witnessing, were any of those said about you, or were you, I don't want to use the word assuming, but if you're watching this and they're saying this about them, this must also be what they feel about me?
Exactly. So it was I as a child, I don't think I cognitively knew, but it was subconscious. And sometimes I would notice, I was like, I would really know, I would be like, that doesn't make any sense. And why are they treating him that way? And what's wrong with him loving somebody else? But I just thought, wow, he must be bad if they say he's bad. And then it was like, I must be bad because I'm like him, and they said he's bad, so I must then also be bad.
So you identified with that individual. You said, I'm like him.
Yep, exactly. And so, you know, that led to this self-loathing, all these drug and alcohol. I mean, that's a whole story in itself. And, you know, by the time my daughter was born, she's 10 now, you would think, oh, your life's going to go up from here. And it went the opposite. I just downward spiraled, out of control. I was doing opioids every day, you know, fell in with the wrong crowd. I finally came out, and that's a whole story in itself too. But you would think, oh, you're coming out, you're able to be yourself. That's so wonderful. And it actually was a really hard experience, and I didn't have much support. I didn't know where to look for support, didn't have the resources. I found myself turning to people that probably weren't the best role models, and, you know, fell in with all kinds of things that weren't wonderful on my journey, but were wonderful because they led me to this place of this conversation with my drug dealer, where eventually I was able to, about, you know, 16 months after that, get completely sober, and had a process within that, even where I kept having these spiritual awakenings, is the best word for them, and kept kind of getting to a place and a new place through time. And she was one of the biggest catalysts to that movement, to reconnecting with God. I had started reconnecting with myself about a month prior to this conversation I had with my drug dealer. And essentially what happened is I was sitting in a car listening to music, just snorted my last line of an Opana, which, if no one knows, is like a really strong pain medicine, similar to like Percocet or Oxycontin. And you know, I did these drugs all the time, so I wasn't like, woo, hi. I was just like, just there, you know, and had this experience where I saw my daughter singing me this song, and I saw myself dead or in a ditch or homeless or in prison or jail or not showing up for her. And I made a commitment to myself in that moment that I would no longer do hard drugs, and that I was going to get on the right path, and I was going to save myself so I could help save her in the future, because it was like her future self singing me this song that was really sad and like where she felt hopeless. And I said, I can't let my daughter go through that. So of course, you know, that was my epiphany in the moment. No more hard drugs, and I stuck to that. But I still smoking weed every day, drinking after that for the next several months. But it was about a month after that realization from the hard drugs, that song, that I had this conversation with my drug dealer, and reconnected me with God. And then from there, I was able to get reconnected with other spiritual things along the way that really helped me, like meditation, breath work, visualization, mindfulness in tons of ways. Concentration was really important for me.
Yeah.
So I can concentrate on one thing at a time and get things done, where I feel like I didn't need to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol to numb the pain, but also kind of to be functional, which I was kind of doing throughout my early adult life. Definitely with marijuana, it was like people say marijuana can't be addicting physically, at least, but it was very, very emotionally and mentally addicting for me. And it was like the only thing I could think about. So even after my child was born, I had stopped smoking right around that time, because my daughter's mother was pregnant, and, you know, I was trying my best to get on the right track. And as soon as she was born, I mean, I was stealing my daughter's mother's pain pills that she was given because she had a cesarean section, and, you know, used all those, and then started smoking weed again, you know, and it was just kept on kind of that downward spiral. And the drug and alcohol abuse was from the time I was 12, and really picked up when I was about 13, and then stopped when I was about 23. So I was about 10 years of pretty heavy active addiction, sometimes way worse than others. You know, when I got on my opioid stint for 6 months and every day was using opioids, that was definitely like the bottom of the barrel. I think I dug below the barrel even, and like put myself in a little hole and didn't want to come out.
So you're, I know that in the LGBTQIA plus community, drugs and alcohol are stereotypically very prevalent. In your experience, you had the conversation with your drug dealer, and you reconnected with God, and you were able to move forward. Why do you think that drugs and alcohol play such a huge role, and it's so capturing within the community?
Well, number one answer is trauma. So the LGBTQ plus community has significant barriers, just societally, religiously, familially, personally. And these barriers then often create traumas. And these traumas then are felt to be needed to be numbed or managed. And I think that's a lot of times how the drug and alcohol abuse starts, use and abuse starts, and then it spirals out of control because you finally feel, at least in my experience, I finally felt numbed enough to where I couldn't feel my pain. And then at other times I felt that was on my hard drugs kind of stint with opioids, though I'd done hard drugs on and off throughout my whole journey, you know, up until that age of 23. But I really think number one is trauma. And drug and alcohol addiction rates are 40% higher in the LGBTQ plus community. So are mental health issues and mental health areas that are exacerbated by this trauma and by these other situations that seem to find themselves in the LGBTQ plus community more often. And really that's related also to this sense of not being good enough, and this sense of feeling abandoned, oftentimes by family, by the church, by society. And all of those kind of build up to this place where people are managing or medicating, self-medicating, or numbing these pains and triggers and these harmful situations. So it really makes sense when you look at the bigger picture, but it's also super sad because when you look at the LGBTQ plus community, literally every statistic that's bad is higher in that community. Everything. I mean, I've never found one, suicide rates are double, triple, 7 times more likely if you're a transgender individual. I mean, it's just everything. I mean, I've done a lot of work in the nonprofit community, which is kind of how I led to start sharing my story. So about 6 or 7 years ago, we started a nonprofit called Love Must Win. And the main purpose was what would have helped us when we were growing up, when we were navigating these things, as we're currently navigating these things, right? Some of the co-founders had sexual abuse or body image issues or depression, anxiety, or familial trauma. Some of us, like me, had addiction and were in recovery. And we just thought, what would have helped us then and what would help us now? So we started forming these programs around how to help people. And really the main mission was always love, acceptance, and kindness, and to simply be able to come into a space and be yourself. So we always say, come as you are, be you. Because when you come into any space that we're in, and you're able just to be yourself and to be loved for who you are. Because we found as people felt that connection with themselves, with love, and with others, and maybe a connection with some type of divinity. And divinity really is broad, from God to Buddha and everything in between. And also for my atheist and agnostic friends, a lot of times that just manifests as love, connection with love. And we were able to provide that space and have provided that space for so many people as they're on their healing journey. And really love as the catalyst for all of it, obviously, hence the name Love Must Win. And I started kind of sharing my story I was the MC for, I would say, 95% of our monthly events throughout the years. So hundreds of events where we would share. And a lot of times, people, especially when you're new to going to like these kind of smaller, intimate events with 10, 20, 30 people, there's not a lot of sharing at first. So a lot of times I would share my story so people felt comfortable then sharing parts of their story. And so really I was, since I was emceeing and like we would host kind of different speakers or different programs to come in and share about that. But then we would have a conversation afterwards, a community conversation. And sometimes people wouldn't want to share. So I just got really used to just sharing all these parts of my stories that most people wouldn't share, about my drug addiction, about my mental health issues, about my suicide attempts, about my challenges being a LGBTQ plus single father, as my challenges in this area or that area, or this or that or the other. And, that's really where it started. I started just really sharing really authentically. And I thought, wow, every time I share more authentic, and I'm able to peel back extra layers of myself and really just show this raw side of me that most people don't see, the more others feel inclined to share, but also to share really authentically, which is sometimes really challenging when we're taught in this world that we have to look a certain way and be a certain way and even present a certain way to people. And so I feel like I was kind of training myself along the way on how to really share authentically and open up. And that eventually led to, me starting this book process around 2 years ago. And so I'm so happy to be able to continue that work that Love Must Win started in me and propel that into other areas of my life and hopefully touch other people's hearts that might not have ever been exposed to the nonprofit or exposed to me in general because of, just geographic location. I'm in the greater Cincinnati area. And, I do travel and do things and work, but there's only so much reach you can have and so many ripples you can create. But my hope is that people pick up the book, read it, learn how to share their story, even if it's just with themselves, journaling. That's how this book started. I auto journaled the whole book. And then I worked with a manuscript strategist and some professionals to really sculpt that into something that we felt like was powerful. And we added a 40-page workbook so that you can kind of work through kind of traumas and triggers is the first half, and then kind of exercises is the second half. Some of those exercises are spiritual, some are just kind of healing exercises, etc. And I was really, really honored to be able to do this project because, you know, it's an expensive project and it's time consuming. And I didn't know if I could do it. At the time when I started it, I was working 60 to 90 hour weeks between my nonprofit work and my paycheck job and school. And so, you know, when COVID hit, it really opened up a little bit of time for me and allowed me to dive in and really do this work. And so I'm just super excited to be able to kind of continue the work that I started through Love Must Win in different avenues. And it's been really important for me to share so other people feel like they're able to share. And like I said, share with yourself, share it as a journal, share with small groups, you know, with one-on-one, share in book groups or peer support groups. Just share where you feel comfortable, when you feel comfortable, but challenge yourself to get outside of your comfort zone, because once you get outside your comfort zone, you get into the growth zone and you're able to grow and learn about yourself and others, and then build these connections that you were talking about at the very beginning. I loved that, because essentially what you were saying is through understanding people, we're able to communicate, and then we're able to connect, build relationships, and break down barriers. And that's literally what is to my core important for me to share with others. And so I feel like we're such an alignment here, and I love that. It just feels perfect to be here with you and sharing with you. So I'll let you ask more questions because I could just talk forever.
Yeah, I love it. See, I get the luxury, and people out there will know this because they watch. I get the luxury of sitting here asking questions and then just listening. And you know, oftentimes, you know, I do have questions, but I just enjoy listening, and it's really great listening to you. I do have, right now we're in the middle of people making a decision to come out, right? We're in, you know, National Coming Out Day is coming up. From your story, where did you and when did you and how find the courage to be able to say, I want to live authentically? And I know it's a process, but for those people who are looking to say, I'm kind of ready to take that step, but it comes with so much. It comes with a lot of awareness from people. It comes with this stigma. It comes with all of these things, but I want to be authentic. How did you process that? And what would be your recommendations as a therapist to encourage somebody to navigate that area?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not a therapist in the traditional sense of a clinician, but I am a coach. And so my number one answer to that, before I even share my story, is to do what feels right in your heart. And that's a whole process to like get in your heart. People be like, well, I don't know what my heart says. Well, there's a few simple ways. I have one simple, really simple method to get into your heart. And what I've learned time and time again is that this really transcends all ages and education backgrounds and types of situations. So you can simply close your eyes, place your hands on your heart, typically your right hand first, or whatever feels comfortable to you. Think about something that you love, and that could be a person, place, thing, animal, group of people, whatever it is. Focus on that for a moment. Take a couple deep breaths, typically in through your nose and out through your mouth, but whatever feels good to you. Feel that love. And then offer gratitude for that love, for that feeling. You can also offer, if you don't feel called to offer gratitude, you can offer other things such as like acknowledgement even. You can offer awareness, but offer something back to that love, like a reciprocal relationship, that it's giving you something, so you're giving it something in return. And then take a few more deep breaths kind of through that process. And you'll get to a place, typically, where you're able to feel something that you might not always feel. And that's where you're able to really tap into your heart space, your heart center, as some people call it, to your heart energy, to your heart chakra. There's a million things you can call it. I just call it love a lot of times. And you're able to tap into that love. And then from there, you're able to better understand what might be a good choice for you for whatever situation you're coming into. Whatever, if that's coming out or anything. And coming out's a really complicated situation. I mean, if you're 15 years old and you're coming out and you know you're going to get kicked out and be on the streets if you come out, it's a much harder thing to do than if you're 18 and in college and, you know, there's an LGBTQ program on campus that supports you and you have avenues or resources to help support you during that process. So like there are logistics that go into coming out that are beyond just our heart. But at least if you can get into that heart space, you know what's right for you and you can know what feels good, and you can navigate some of those other areas that are a little bit more challenging, like logistical aspects of coming out. And my goal is to one day, and this is the hope for my book, is that someone can pick it up, a parent, a pastor, you know, a brother, a sister, an aunt, and really understand more, at least one person's journey in the LGBTQ community, and maybe help them understand that we're just people and we're all humans and we should all love each other. And, you know, if it just helps some of these kids, like if I can, you know, I imagine this like 15, 16-year-old coming out to their parents and they're having a hard time with it, and someone suggests the book and they read it, and then they are able to closer relate to that child and make them feel more loved. That would, to me, would be worth $1 million, a million blessings, because that to me is how we grow and evolve as humanity. We get to a place where we're breaking down these preconceived notions and barriers that we had for ourselves and for others. So backing up back to my coming out story, sorry, I wanted to share that because I think it's really important that people feel safe when they come out, and there's a lot of things that go into that. So please feel free to reach out if you have questions, and I can, you know, get you in touch with others that are professionals in this area, therapists, you know, advocates, counselors, people that have been through this before. One of my favorite people to send people to is a professor from Northern Kentucky University, who was that first out trans professor at the university, because obviously they have a really cool story and they're able to really understand the trans narrative, whereas I might not understand that as much. So coming out looks different for every letter of the LGBTQ plus spectrum. It looks different for every single situation. Logistically, it looks different for every single person's intra kind of personal relationship with coming out. And mine is kind of a mix of all of those things, right? And it was about a 10-year journey of coming out. So I came out to myself, well, so it's longer, because I came out to myself when I was about 8 or 9, 10, and that area is really forming what that meant to me. By the time I was 14, I was ready to share that. Finally shared it when I was 15 with a friend. Her name's Megan. And shared with Megan. Megan grew up really conservative Catholic. She went to one of the most prestigious Catholic private schools in the area. And she was really loving and supporting when I came out. And there was this last thing she said, though, that was so hard for me. She said, I love you, I accept you, but the church doesn't. And I think this is 10, 15 years, or this is actually over 15 years ago. So things have shifted a little bit and things have gotten a little better. But in general, where we live, a lot of the Catholic churches aren't always accepting. Yeah, a little better. But though there are congregations in our area that are really making strides to do that. And so I'm so excited. But back to my story, and Megan had told me, yeah, the church doesn't think it's right. And I was taught in school this and that. And she's pretty much said, like, I'm battling this for you because, like, I want you to be in a good place, like salvation wise, or in a good space with God or divinity. And I don't know if you can do that while you're being gay, but I love you. And it's okay to be gay or bisexual or whatever you are. Because I didn't really know what I was coming out as. I'm like, I'm gay or bisexual or something, because I'd always dated girls and I liked girls, but there was like this longing. It was so much, you know, and when you're kept from something you like, just like a little kid that can't play with a toy, and other kids are playing with it, you like really want that toy. So it was like, I really wanted to experience the LGBTQ plus lifestyle, but didn't know how to do it. So I came out to this friend and felt really safe and secure. But on the same time, it like reinforced that religious trauma and religious rhetoric that I had heard growing up. So it was like really hard and really challenging. And then I came out to a few other friends over time. One was a girlfriend when I was a junior in high school. We had just kind of broken up, and I shared with her, and she was like, oh yeah, cool. She had Episcopalian like grandma or something. She's like, oh, that's cool. She's like, I'm sad because I was still in love with you and I wanted to be with you. But obviously, like, you know, you're gay or bisexual and you need to figure all that out. And like, I'll be your best friend through this, and really helped in that area. And I came out to my daughter's mother a few months into us dating. We started dating when we were 18. Well, I was 18 and she was 20. We started dating, and I finally came out to her after a few months of dating because I didn't want her to find herself in a situation where she wasn't aware of what was going on. But I was still very secretive about it. So I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm, you know, thinking about men a lot or whatever. It was just more of like, and every now and again I'd say a little comment after that, and it just wasn't received very well. And yeah, and there's so much more story to this, but to truncate it up, it's, you know, there were times I tried to come out and she didn't want me to. And even if I was just trying to come out, I tried to come out to her sister at one point, and she was like, that's embarrassing for me. Don't do that. So I was trying to honor that for her. Yeah. But it felt like I didn't have anybody to talk to because I wasn't friends with those people I'd come out with earlier in life. So I didn't really have any support system. So eventually I came out to my mom. Actually through that situation where she wasn't allowing me, and allowing is such a hard word, but it was, I didn't feel like I had permission in our relationship to do that. And it was causing a lot of friction and problems. So I was like, I need to come out to somebody because I need to share this. So I just came out to my mom. And that was really helpful and beautiful. And my mom was super supporting. She always was since I was a child. She always said, if you boys are gay, there were 3 brothers, by the way. If you boys are gay, it's all good. Like, we're to love you no matter what. And that's the crazy thing in this situation and my story is that I had an immediate family that was loving and accepting, and that's beautiful. But like, I still turned into this self-loathing machine because I had heard these other things from other extended family and society and churches. And so I think it's just really important that we remember as people come out to us to watch what we say, to really be mindful. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all in that moment. I mean, you have your right to process and share your feelings and emotions, but maybe you should think about who you're going to share those with. Maybe it's not appropriate for you to share those with your daughter who's coming out, or your son, or your cousin or nephew. Just watch what you say and process that with a trusted person in your life. And so it's a coming out process isn't just for the person, it's for families and for friends. And it can be challenging for everyone. PFLAG's a great resource. I'm sure, Philip, you're aware of PFLAG or GLSEN, but PFLAG's amazing. They have chapters all over the United States. And there's tons of resources out there to help with parents and friends and families of people that are coming out. And, you know, there's also tons of resources for people coming out, and it's National Coming Out Day coming up on October 11th, which is Monday, I believe. And we're just, you know, I'm excited for people that are able to use that day as a catalyst to come out. I didn't even know there was a thing when I was, and there might not have been when I was younger. And long story short, and it's like I said, I'm trying to truncate it because the process was so long. By the time I finally came out after my daughter was born to everyone, it was just really like a weight off my shoulders. It was like I could like feel again. But then little things started piling back up there, and it was like not having a good support system in the LGBT community, not knowing organizations or people or friends, and then I started the harder drug use on a consistent basis, and it just really spiraled me in my situation into this place that was really dark and bad. And also on the other side, though, you know, once I came out and was really and felt comfortable enough telling just a stranger on the street, if they were like, "Oh, you have a girlfriend?" and it's like, "Nope, it would be a boyfriend for me." And that was really hard. And that took up to just a few years ago even. Because I was like, well, it's not anyone's business. I don't have to share. But now I'm able to share in a way that feels good to me. And I'm able to stand up and say, yeah, no, that's a girlfriend for me. You know, it's just because there's 4 guys sitting here doesn't mean that we all like girls. That's not a fair assumption. And that's not a fair judgment on us as humans. And that's not, and I don't feel seen or heard or valued when situations like that happen. So now I say, oh, except me might be a boyfriend, haha, like joking around, or, you know, and I try not to make people feel uncomfortable, but I stand up for myself and what feels good for me in that moment. And that's been a whole journey and process. So that's like after coming out, that's 5 years after, you know, coming out to everyone, is still kind of had to work on that, you know, holding hands with one of my first boyfriends in public, holding hands with my boyfriend and my child, you know, my partner at the time and my child. That was a whole like coming out process.
Let me ask you, for you,
so many.
I know. Listen, for you, and for people who are, you know, thinking about their story or thinking about having their story, I think there's also an element, and I can relate in this element. You know, you mentioned that you had a very accepting family. I know part of the challenge, you know, for myself was, it wasn't I wasn't embarrassed. I felt like I was disappointing. You know, it was like I guess in public, or it's like, oh no, you're not that. You know, it's like I'm not embarrassed to be whatever it is, but I think there's a level that I feel like I'm letting people down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I had felt that, especially in the first part of my coming out, like when I first shared with Megan, it was like I felt like I disappointed her, or even if I didn't disappoint her, I felt like I created some turmoil within her, which was really beneficial to her journey. Now she's a huge advocate for the LGBTQ plus community in her professional and personal life, and is a really beautiful example of how we transform our own thoughts and feelings about certain things. But yeah, there was this disappointment that I felt for myself, but I also felt like others might be disappointed in me, or others might shame me or be mean to me. So like the situation where my partner and my child and me were all holding hands for the first time at Kings Island, which is like an amusement park in the area. I was so scared. And my partner at the time, he had been through so much religious trauma that this was like a big deal, a big step for him. And this lady approached us, no idea what she was going to say. And she said, I want to tell you something. And we couldn't read the situation. So we're like, oh my God, is she going to make a scene in front of my, like at the time, 4-year-old, 5-year-old child? And what's going to happen here? And she said, I want to tell you how amazing it is that you're able to walk hand in hand, all 3 of you together. And I can feel your love. And I'm so honored that you were able to show up like this for all of us, to set an example of what love looks like. And me and my partner at the time were holding back our tears, still set out to hold back my tears in this moment, got in the car and just cried together. My 5-year-old child was probably like, what is going on?
Yeah.
We did explain to her, and she was like, that's great that, like, you know, I've always been that way with her. Her name's Harper. And I've always been that way with Harper. I've always tried to explain to her situation. So it wasn't just like, yeah, Dad and his partner are literally crying over here like madmen. But we explained to her like how that felt to us, because there were some people in our pasts and some people that are religious. You know, we just told her how it was. We said people in society, or people in certain religions, or people in this area or that area might have said something nasty, but instead she said something nice, and how beautiful that was, and explained that to her. And so it was like this learning and growth for her. And, you know, she just went to camp this last year for a whole week. And she came out of camp and said, Dad, there's like 4 girls that identified as lesbian there. And I said, cool. And I said, you know, and I think kids are able to share that more now at even a younger age, but also like she's able to understand that and not feel any sort of way about it. It was just like cool to her. It wasn't like oh my gosh, or like, what if they, you know, made me uncomfortable or whatever. It's always this like beautiful place where she's able to connect to kids her age and older kids or whoever, and just kind of support them and love them for who they are. And that was like a really cool moment for me as a dad in the LGBTQ plus community, to see my daughter like advocating for these younger kids that are, you know, coming into whatever sexual orientation or gender identity that might not be what they're used to seeing around them. You know, we live in a more rural area in Northern Kentucky. We don't live in, you know, a metro area where that's like a common thing all the time. And so it's cool to have like a kiddo who's an advocate just by being herself. She didn't have to do anything. She didn't have to take any lessons. You know, she didn't have to do any program, but it's because we taught her along the way what things could look like, what they looked like for us on our journeys. She's been around a lot of LGBTQ people. She's been around a lot of people that are just different in general than her, which then help her to connect, just like we were talking about at the very beginning in your opening. So I'm really proud of her, and she's such a beautiful light for the world.
With your new book that's out, you mentioned it earlier, that it's a great resource for parents and for pastors, just to get more understanding. And I know that we're running over time. Do you mind if we keep going just for a little bit?
Thumbs up, whatever's good for you.
I don't want to hold you hostage all up in the interweb. So I really want to get your perspective on this, because it's going to be National Coming Out Day, and you mentioned that it's not just for the people coming out, it's for everybody around them. A lot of times when parents in particular are introduced to the idea and the reality of their child being LGBTQ+, there's a sense of, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? I didn't raise you like this, X, Y, and Z. From your history working in the nonprofit sector, and specifically speaking with a lot of different people about this, what advice or perspective can you give parents that may be struggling with that particular concept on this particular day?
Wow. Like right when you said that, I started getting tears in my eyes, and I'm trying to like hold them back. So just if they go loose, they go loose, and that's okay. It's so simple. It's literally like 3 words: love your kids. It's so simple. Love your kids. And I might add a 4th word: love your darn kids. And I might use other expletives if we weren't on the air. And I actually had them in my book. And it's funny, I said, love your effing kids, love your effing, and I said it like 3 times in a row. And my manuscript strategist was like, maybe that's sending a more aggressive message than you want. And I said, okay. I said, but I want people to know to love your kids. Like, if most parents say, if their kid or child as an adult or a teenager had a vehicular homicide and they were part of that, they would sit there in court with them, even as in something more malicious and were a murderer. Most parents, statistically, you will see the parents in that courtroom supporting or at least showing up for that child. If parents can do that, you can love your kids through something that they have no control over. And I think that's the second thing, if we want to get more in depth, is no one has control over their gender or their gender identity or sexual orientation. I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I want to be gay. That sounds fun. That sounds like I want to have a more challenging life in some areas, and I want to go through this process. That sounds like an exciting thing. Thank goodness. No, and I have not heard one story of one person ever, hundreds and hundreds and thousands probably of stories I've heard, where someone said, I just want to be gay today, or I want to be this way, or I want to be that way. It's who we were made. And there's one message I have for people that struggle with that in a religious sense, and that is, I believe God made everyone just the way we are for a reason. And if you battle that, that's okay, because that's your journey. But don't push your journey and your perception and your views onto other people that create harm. A lot of people that try to kill themselves, a lot of people that go into drugs and alcohol, a lot of members of the LGBT community that struggle with mental health are because of their family, friends, church, parents, siblings not supporting who they are. And would you rather have an alive child or a dead child? And that's very dramatic, but it's not dramatic at all. Yeah, like, go look at the suicide rates. We already talked about, just look them up. You can find them they're readily available on the internet. Just look up LGBTQ suicide rates. I mean, do you want to be a part of your child's suffering, or do you want to be a part of your child finding their own version of God, or if maybe even it's a similar version of God that you have? I don't know. And that's everyone's situation is different, but don't give up on them, and don't perpetuate this hate that they already might feel in their heart for themselves because they've been taught not to love themselves. And if they're taught not to love themselves, they're going to be more easily susceptible to use drugs and alcohol, to end up with all kinds of more challenges, suicide, self-mutilation. I mean, it's all so much higher in the community, and part of it is a lack of support, a lack of understanding. The other piece is, I go through this with my partner's family. They're conservative, but one thing that was really beneficial on his journey is he wrote them a letter and put his foot down and said, you have to love me just like you love my sister. And if you can't, then I don't want to be a part of your life. And it's just really hard for me to talk about, but like, such a beautiful situation, because they did some inner work and really looked at themselves and said, I would rather have a son, and I'm going to be so loving and accepting and kind to my son's partner that they're not going to ever know the difference between, you know, their daughter's partner and how they treat me. And they did the work. And doesn't mean that they shifted their whole view, what they believe in personally, religiously, but you know what they didn't do? They stopped, and they don't push that on to me or him or anyone else. And they let us just love each other. And the best thing you can do for your kids is simply love them and allow them to love. Because when you tell someone they can't love someone that they love, it is the hardest and the worst feeling that you could ever feel in your life. And maybe you understand that, being in the LGBT community, not being in the LGBT community, but regardless, give yourself permission to process, give yourself permission to go talk to people about it, give yourself permission to be frustrated, upset, but don't give yourself permission to be mean to your children and to hate your children, because that's not helpful. And you love your children. I mean, I don't know one parent that says I don't love my children. So just love your children. I mean, it's so simple. And it might be a hard journey for you to get there, to understand what that all looks like. And that's okay. That's your journey. Don't push that off on anybody else. But there are great resources to help you. And there's churches. I mean, there's affirming places of worship, so many all over the world, all over the country, where you can talk to people that you can that can help you understand, maybe your version of God in a little bit different of a way. And I will say, if you're really wanting to dive in, watch 1946, because 1946, the documentary, will really open your eyes and heart. And no matter who you are, LGBTQ plus or Christian or non-Christian, or just interested about the Bible and the word homosexual, because that documentary will showcase you a whole different perception that you might not have ever heard of or seen. And I could go into a whole hour about that, but we won't, because I'm not a theologian, and not here to convert anybody to anything other than love. Get into your heart, love your kids, period. It's the most, for some people it can be a hard journey, but it's the most simple concept. You would love your kids if they hurt somebody or murdered someone and were sitting in the court, waiting for them to support them or whatever. You would show up for them. So show up for your kids in other ways, which is just to simply love them.
That's powerful. Simply love them. So you're on your book tour. How's that going?
Oh, it's been amazing. I have 7 stops here in the greater Cincinnati area. One was an internal event for Mental Health of America. And just going to different places, some are faith-based organizations, some are spiritual centers, churches. One's an art studio, which is really awesome. I wanted to make sure people that weren't comfortable in kind of like church or spiritual situations to have a place to come to. They serve cocktails and mocktails, so you can have a drink or a non-alcoholic drink and sit and relax and support their business, but also at the same time, have a safe place to come together. So I'm really excited just to get out there. And my purpose in doing this is I could have done one large launch event, which is what a lot of authors do. They get 50, 100, 200, 300, whatever people there. And that's great. And it's powerful, and it has purpose. But I thought instead of doing one large launch event, I'd rather do 8 to 10 smaller, more intimate gatherings and create some community conversations and still impact around the same amount of people, but get into different areas and to really make it more personable and more about connection, less about come hear me read my book like a robot. Like, I wanted it to be personable and real, and I wanted people to be able to ask questions and feel like they were able to communicate and chat and connect. So that was my goal behind it. It's going really wonderful. A lot of organizations that I'm working with and a lot of venues I'm working with are doing a hybrid version, so you can watch online or in person, which is really great because audiences in the greater Cincinnati area, like for anything and for churches or for other things, have been kind of thinned out just due to kind of people feeling comfortable or not comfortable, being in groups of people. So this is the way where a lot of people can still interact and be a part of the conversation where they don't have to directly be there. So I'm really appreciative for all of these organizations and people really coming together to support my work, but more so supporting people sharing their story, supporting love. That's really what I feel like my whole life mission is and what my purpose is. And it dives into it more in the book, but it's definitely helping others love and accept themselves for who they are and giving them the tools to do so, or helping them to understand how to get those tools. Because what I've learned in my journey is I can't give you love. I can't give you acceptance for yourself. I can give you love for me and acceptance for me, but you have to give yourself your own self-love and your self-worth and self-value and self-esteem and self-acceptance.
That is very good. That's very profound. And that's very good. Yeah, that was very good. So for everybody that's watching now, I know that they've seen your email address, but for those on social media who may want to connect, who may have questions, where can they find you?
Really, Ryan Joseph Allen. So if you type that into most social media, I will pop up there. And if you live in this, the tri-state area, as far as like Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, we probably have some mutual friends if we're in the LGBTQ plus community. But for people not and don't have access to that, simply just go to my website or go to Love Must Win's website. It's just lovemustwin.org. You'll be able to, you can find me there. You can find me on my website. I mean, there's a lot of avenues, but Ryan Joseph Allen will usually send you to me somewhere. If you type that into Google, it should kind of send you in my direction. But yeah, you can get to me as well, most simply probably from the website.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for people to reach out and get the book. What a resource for just everybody. So Ryan, thank you so much for staying and for coming here and being so authentic. And I always like to use the word courageous because it takes courage to tell your story. It takes courage to get to that place and remain in that place and challenge yourself to move forward in that space. So I appreciate that and for you sharing it with us here.
Yeah, I'm honored to be with you all today and just spread some love. And if one person, my main mission is if one person is impacted by everything I show up to or try to do or do, then my purpose is fulfilled and I am so happy. So thank you for offering that. Sorry, I get it must be an emotional day for me. I know Mercury's in retrograde, but I'm an emotional person anyway, but it must be an emotional day for me. But I'm so thankful for the opportunity and just to share some love with people. You helped me live my life purpose today. So thank you so much.
Oh, you are welcome. Everybody, that was Ryan. I'm just so encouraged and I'm so inspired and I'm so quickened because when I see people that share their story, much of the story is very difficult to relive and sometimes it's difficult just to admit. But to find a space to be able to inspire somebody else with our journeys, with our ups, with our downs, it is much like you said, just to reach one person. So today, I hope that you found this as well as the knowledge of his book to be a resource for you, to be a resource for your family, and just to be a resource. And as we say here always, never forget that you are the best you in the world.
Don't